This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Atom Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through custom Trace Audio cables and the new Empirical Labs pump compressor mixed through Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, Nectar, and Plasma, all mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
I was seeing all these other guys and they were making music way faster than I could. I'm used to taking, somewhat of my time making a record. It's a project that takes several months. But here, we're pretty much delivering a song or 2 tracks a day. When you're composing, it's just whatever the first idea is, that's the one you're going with. Because there's really no time to experiment.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Sick of searching for the right cable or wondering how to hook up your studio? Trace Audio has you covered. Based in Nashville but serving studios everywhere, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, patch bay labels, and wiring solutions for home and pro studios. Try out the free online custom patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com to easily color code, label, and organize your XLR or quarter-inch bays, which are popular with home studios. It's sleek, professional, and simple to use. Then use the code RSR15 for 15% off printing and shipping your custom patch bay labels to take your studio to the next level.
Someone asked me a while back, do you fear AI will one day replace you as a mastering engineer? Well, it hasn't yet. That's because algorithms don't listen to music or to clients. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Sound Porter Mastering. When I master, I experience the music as your fans will, with the honesty of fresh ears. And unlike AI, I master with your intentions in mind, not merely to process the mix and boost the levels. If you want an experienced live engineer to master your music as only a human can, find me at soundporter.com.
Howdy Rockstars, it's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Raphael Sepulveda, an alt-rock producer and composer based here in Nashville, Tennessee. Originally from the Dominican Republic, Raphael found his way to the U.S. in 2010 to pursue a college degree in music. After graduating in 2013, he obtained an internship at StadiumRed Studios in New York City, where he learned the ropes and quickly climbed the industry ladder. Raphael worked as an in-house engineer at several other studios in the city, most notably SweetSounds Studios, where before setting out on his own and becoming a freelance producer-engineer focused on alt-rock. In 2018, Raphael located to Music City here in Nashville in search of new beginnings, and in 2020, partnered with Howling Music, a music for advertising company, as a composer. His work has earned the Music House a 2023 Nashville American Advertising Awards Gold Addy Award. That's cool, for Best Ad Music in Nashville. And in 2024, a Clio Award for use of music in film and video. Having a strong passion for music tech, Raphael has become a third-party app developer for the software automation platform Soundflow, creating productivity and workflow tools for Pro Tools. Raphael and I met years ago at Addiction Sound across town in Berry Hill, or at Addiction Studios, rather. We just started chatting, and I found out that he was doing cool stuff and also really into the Soundflow stuff, which I was discovering. And so lots of fun stuff to talk about. Please welcome Raphael Sepulveda to Recording Studio Rockstars. Raphael, are you ready to rock, dude?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Right on, man. Well, first off, man, I love your name, Sepulveda. There's like the boulevard in LA, right?
Yeah, anybody from LA gets my name right.
Yeah, that's always if I'm on Sepulveda, I know I'm on my way to LAX too.
There you go. That was my experience as
and
well.
then was that also? Am I mixing it up, or was that also the name of Anakin Skywalker's nemesis in the pod races, or was it something close to that?
It's probably something close to that. I've never heard that one before.
Dude, it's awesome to have you at the studio and on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm excited to be here.
Nice, man. Well, so, Rockstars, we're joining you from Podcast HQ here. What do you think we should name this studio, man?
That's a good question. Let's see.
What does it feel like?
Well, it definitely feels like a spaceship still, right?
The spaceship, yep. The pod ship. Maybe it's the pod.
Oh, there you go.
The mothership.
I like that.
The pod ship. Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I mean, you've got a pretty cool story. I didn't know much about that after we chatted before, but like coming up here from the Dominican Republic, when did you came to the U.S. to
basically to
stuff,
study? Yeah, that was my main purpose, just to come here and get an education in music. Because before that, I was just playing in bands.
Yeah,
and I kind of wanted to figure out how to do it properly, or get some sort of education with that. And before that, I didn't really have a lot of experience with engineering or recording or anything like that. So I kind of wanted to learn, just kind of get a sense of what people were doing here, in the Dominican Republic. Things we were kind of like, they didn't really have a lot of things going on in the music industry. So here is where I understood I could get that. So
I've never been there, so I don't really know anything about it.
Oh, the Dominican Republic is a beautiful place. We're known for tourism, beautiful beaches, and it's located between Cuba and Puerto Rico.
Oh, and it's the same island. It shares it with Haiti.
With Haiti, yes.
Oh, I didn't see. I needed to pay more attention in my history and geography classes.
So yeah, well, we're known for that, and great food, great beer, baseball.
Yeah, no doubt. And so, do you feel like you grew up with a particular musical influence at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my house, we had a lot of different influences. Stuff like Michael Jackson, obviously all the artists from the DR. But then as I grew up, I kind of started to find my own way, with the people that I was meeting in the world. So I quickly inclined into rock music. That kind of like became apparent to me that's I vibe more with that than what I was listening to before. I remember the first time I listened to Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana. Yeah. That changed my life. And that's the first song that I learned in the guitar. And the guitar being my main instrument, that's the first thing that got me in the map in terms of playing music. And from then on, I just kept discovering what else, because there was so much. Where you could go from Marilyn Manson, super heavy, Korn, or it could go to the Foo Fighters. That from the DR, it was a huge discovery for me to encounter this type of music.
Okay, cool. So you were really, you saw like the variety of influences and what you could do. How do you feel like the music that you shared with me, do you have a way that you like to describe the kind of, you call it indie rock, Do you
I like to put it,
genre you like to give?
I like to put it on the umbrella of alternative rock. Yeah. But basically, the music that I do now is what I came up with in the scene. So it's kind of like that early 2000s emo, all rock. Think My Chemical Romance, Paramore, Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, totally.
All of the stuff that I liked back then that we were trying to imitate. I basically feel like that's kind of like the stuff that I make the best. Even though, if I've toyed around with many genres, that's the stuff that I can pretty much do in my sleep.
Yeah, it's kind of up-tempo.
Yes, high energy
rock,
belty vocals.
I think of skater, punk, and stuff like that too. Straight edge.
Yeah, there you go.
Different names. Well, cool, man. So you came up and did the recording school thing. Where did you end up doing the music stuff and recording school?
I went to, and actually I went to school for music performance. So there was no engineering at all there. I went to a school in New Jersey called Caldwell College. Now it's called Caldwell University. But I did my degree there in music performance in guitar. And as I was going through that process, I was just, thinking like, how am I going to make money out of this? Because, doing it as a musician is pretty hard. So that's when I started to gravitate towards recording. At the time, I was getting better with Pro Tools, like getting my own music recorded and all that kind of stuff. So I quickly became pretty good at that. So that's when I kind of started to shift. Towards the end of my degree of the whole course, I needed to find a job. I needed to find a way to make money. So I did not have any opportunities playing guitar or anything like that. So I was able to get a job working at a studio in Jersey. And at the same time, I got an internship working at a bigger studio in New York. I lived just 20 minutes away from New York City at the time.
Did you feel like it was like you had to make a choice between, if I want to do the guitar thing and sing, my only option is to get on tour with somebody?
Yeah, and that was my dream. I thought that, by the age of 24, and this is kind of silly saying it, but yeah, at the age of 24, I should be in a touring band. And if I didn't get that I wouldn't be successful in my mind. That did not happen. And I didn't see, I was trying hard with a band that I was playing at the time. That was not going to go anywhere. So I figured, this is my next best thing.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, it's like to want to do the touring thing, like you said, trying hard in a band that you're in also gambles on like, maybe this band will get noticed and maybe, the money will go into making this band tour versus maybe being a guitarist and you're just trying to be on a scene where somebody just, picks you to go on tour.
Right. Like usually,
artist.
People from the background that I'm from, like usually you have a band that you play in, and depending on what you're doing, they might get you to play in their band, depending on what type of offers you get. So I was just, playing in a local band in Jersey and just trying to get out there to be part of the Jersey scene. It did not help that I moved, country. So I, all the networking that I had done in my home country was not worth anything here. So I had to start fresh, getting to be known in the scene.
Yeah.
But I was running out of time. At the time I was living with my aunt, and right after college, that was it. I need to find a way to make a living and find my own place to live. So I needed to make it happen, and that came in the form of recording.
You think like if you had been in Nashville at that stage, do you think you might have tried to go play on Broadway? Or
probably, yes, because that to me seems easier than the scene that I was in before.
Yeah, it's like touring but staying home.
Right, there you go.
The tourist scene,
I would have definitely tried Broadway. I don't know if I would have been there for a long time, because it does look exhausting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have probably hit Broadway day one.
Guitar playing grad school,
Yeah, I would have just learned all kinds of songs.
Hours and hours every single day. Yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, I don't know how many places in the world have that much going on a particular scene. I mean, probably Vegas has got a lot of gig opportunities. Probably any big tourist industry might have a lot, but
definitely not in New York. There was nothing like that in New York. And when I saw it the first time, I was like, wow, like they're really hustling out here.
Yeah. Well, so you pivoted over to the studio thing. And, for me too, it's like I loved playing music, but I was good at the tech stuff, and I just thought it was fun, like it really is fun to learn all the recording aspect of it and sort of like make that your career path. What were some of the things that you remember learning when you were in New York, being over at StadiumRed and SweetSounds?
Well, when I started, like I was so, I didn't have a proper education in terms of engineering, so I had to learn everything kind of like a trial by fire situation. like I said before, I am very technically, I don't know how to say it. Like technical stuff, it's pretty easy for me to learn. I kind of have that easiness of like taking a technical concept and being able to digest it. So I feel like that's why I was able to get with Pro Tools pretty quickly.
Is this like, do you think that's a family thing for you too?
Probably. My dad is an engineer.
Okay, yeah.
So that's probably where it comes from. Like I can digest that more, I would say, compared to, people know me now as like the technical guy. Whenever they have something, they need help with Pro Tools or setting up their rig, they call me. And even if I'm not very familiar with the equipment, I can pick up the manual and just kind of like associating with the stuff that I've learned before, I can get
figure it out.
So when I started out, like I didn't even know what a patch bay was or what it did exactly. So I picked up the manual. Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let me. Cool. Let me just patch all this up. Okay, there you go. I don't have to go behind the gear rack and plug it directly in. I can just go here. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, how about the console? Learn about the console. Okay, it looks intimidating at first, but every channel is the same. Just multiply by 32. And okay, there's the master section. Okay, cool. I learned all that by reading the manual and looking up on YouTube. And then people trusted me enough to run the sessions. So that's where I started. At first, like I was doing parallel things. I was working at a smaller studio in Jersey, running actual sessions as an engineer. But then I was at StadiumRed, which is a studio that was in New York and Harlem. That was a bigger studio, bigger clients. So there I was in an intern capacity. So it was interesting to see the difference between, running a session at a smaller scale versus the bigger scale. And I was able to kind of like go through my internship at the bigger studio way quicker than most. I think I was only an intern for 3 months before they basically handed me the keys, and it's like, okay, you can do sessions.
Nice.
I obviously started as did a short stint as an assistant, and then quickly, if they had a session, I was available. So they put me on as an engineer.
That's great. That's really good.
Pretty quickly.
I mean, probably maybe it helped that you had the musical experience too. Maybe you had some experience in a studio already.
Yes.
But you definitely got the tech skills, and Rockstars, we'll be talking about that. So, when I first met Raphael, we started chatting about this app called Soundflow, which I don't remember what the order of discovery was. But anyway, I knew about Soundflow, and Soundflow lets you do things like program macro buttons for your Pro Tools sessions, where you can have one button, you hit it, and it does all kinds of stuff for you. And I had experience with macros in the studio. I remember learning, about I keys way back, and then now it's Keyboard Maestro would be one I would use. And it's cool when you have dove deep enough into using an app to realize that you're doing 5 button clicks for something, and it would speed up your workflow if you just did 1 button click, or whatever it is. And then you discover these macro things. But we never really had a really great one for Pro Tools. You could kind of do some stuff with other macro programs, but then along comes Soundflow, and you can do a lot of really dive in and do some pretty amazing stuff. And I haven't even seen it. I know like Andrew Sheps has Bounce Factory.
Right.
Yeah, correct me if I say any of the names wrong. But that one, I haven't used it, but I've seen some of the stuff that it does, and it's like kind of mind-blowing to see like the level of automatableness.
Yeah, Soundflow, let me tell you, it changed my life. Like that is something I discovered, out of the necessity of trying to do a lot of mundane tasks. And I needed to do them quickly and precisely. So I went on the whole automation quest to see what was available. And a lot of people know Keyboard Maestro. That's the one that's very popular. So I started with that, and then became acquainted with Soundflow. And that was like mind-blowing because you could do so many things, and it was built by somebody that was using Pro Tools. Keyboard Maestro, on the other hand, is a general tool that can be used for anything on the Mac. And even though Soundflow can do all those things as well for any application on a Mac, it was centered around the Pro Tools community and audio community in general, which made it super easy to get on board in terms of like finding different things that had already been built by other people.
Yeah.
And if anybody hasn't heard about Soundflow, basically it's an app that allows you to do more stuff by clicking less. It's just, when I found it, I was very, very, I wouldn't say scared, but I was kind of like a little bit intimidated, to be honest.
Oh, me too.
Because, you see the screen, a bunch of code, a bunch of letters, it's like, what is going on? I just want to like drag something in, something pre-made. And so actually when I started the trial, I let it lapse. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to come back to this later.
Yeah.
So I stuck with my little Keyboard Maestro and quickly saw where the limitations were with that. And I would go into the Soundflow forum, see they were doing so many cool things. I was like, man, let me give this a try again. So
what are some fundamental limitations of Keyboard Maestro that Soundflow solves?
The way that we do stuff with Keyboard Maestro is basically doing mouse clicks on the screen and doing keyboard shortcuts. Where Soundflow took it to the next level was something called UI automation. So instead of actually clicking on a button that needs to be on the screen, how a human would do it, Soundflow can figure out that button. And even though we call it an element click, but it's actually interacting with the button itself, no matter if it's on the screen or not. It will just find it wherever it is, and if it opens a menu, it will interact with that and just do it way more seamlessly than it would be using just basically simulating a human being moving the mouse.
And that's what Keyboard Maestro would do, is you can get it to simulate those mouse movements. But I remember from doing it myself, it gets very complicated at times, and you're like, sometimes if your screen wasn't set up right, it's moving the mouse in the wrong part of the screen.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Wacky stuff happens.
So Soundflow allows you to get to that next layer of things, which makes automating more reliable.
Yeah.
And also kind of like when there's situations in which you need to wait a specific amount of time, that's where Soundflow really shines, because you can make it dependent on waiting for something to happen instead of making it wait 2 seconds or 3 seconds.
That was the other thing about Keyboard Maestro, is I'd be like, oh, my macro tried to click too quickly before the thing had actually popped up on the screen, so I have to like program it. Instead of 5 seconds, wait 10 seconds.
Right, depending on how long your computer has been on, it can take a little longer. And if you share that with your friends, their system might be completely different. So making it dependent on something like an event happening and then keep on going. That makes it way more reliable. So I saw all the guys doing all that stuff on the Soundflow forum. And then I decided, I was like, I got to look into this more. And it completely changed my life. I didn't know about any coding before Soundflow. I had tried to learn KSP, which is the language for Contact, to make Contact libraries.
Oh, right.
Cool. And I just gave up because I was missing the fundamentals of programming. When you go to school, you learn your ABCs, your numbers. I didn't know that. And there wasn't a resource to learn that quickly with Contact. The cool thing about Soundflow is that the language that we use is JavaScript. And JavaScript is probably the most popular language there is. So there is so many resources to learn about it. I learned the basics through an app, one of those coding apps that they give to kids now. I just learned the basics through there. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Control flow, variables, Booleans. Like, I learned all that stuff. It's like, okay, now I went back to Soundflow. It's like, I can understand this. Okay, this makes sense. And obviously it took a few months of practicing and doing the thing to be able to actually get to the level where I am now.
At Isotope, saturation just got a whole lot smarter. Introducing the new iZotope Plasma plugin to supercharge your sound by giving your tracks exactly what they need, precisely when and where they need it. Unlike traditional saturators that apply a static effect, Plasma's groundbreaking flux saturation technology analyzes your sound and applies dynamic processing, adding targeted warmth, depth, and character to bring out the best in your mixes and masters. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off the new Plasma or any of the awesome plugins at iZotope.com. Atom Audio proudly announces the D3V active desktop monitors and H200 dynamic closed-back studio headphones, designed in Berlin for pro-level monitoring in home studios. The D3V features 3.5-inch woofers with ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact design ideal for songwriters and producers. The D3V includes USB-C and balanced analog inputs, a headphone output, and DSP room acoustics. The H200 closed-back headphones feature powerful 32-ohm drivers and comfortable ear pads in a durable metal construction, making them perfect for studio or portable use. The included plugin enhances tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot at atomaudio.com. When you dove it deep into the code stuff, that lets you create some of the deeper level stuff. So like, for the rock stars listening to this, do they need to learn JavaScript to go use it, or is that like you don't need to do that?
No, you don't. We have two ways you can handle a macro in Soundflow. There's the easy way, which is very similar to what it is in Keyboard Maestro. You basically drag blocks that do specific actions into a page, let's call it.
Yeah.
And you just put it, okay, I want it to click here.
This happens first, then do this.
Yeah,
then do
create
this,
a new track here and then name it like this. And they're already kind of pre-programmed blocks. So you just build your macro like that. And that is by far the easiest way to do it, especially with the huge library of stuff that's already pre-built in Soundflow, not only by Soundflow itself, but by the community. That's the other thing. The community is just great. The best community I've ever been in. You know, I'm not much of a forum guy, but that is the forum that I visit the most.
That's one of the things that they also brought to the table that I thought was cool, is this idea of building a community where, like you're saying, you can go in to the store and you can be like, oh, wow, there's like an app for iZotope that will give me all the buttons I want for RX, or there's an app for, I think recently they did a Logic one or something like that. So now it's like, oh, you've got all the commands that will like instantly do all kinds of stuff for Logic. And that stuff's all pretty cool. And then I find it's really useful to just decide, well, what do I really need? So like recently I did my own, do you call them macros or what do you call them?
Macros or scripts, know, depending on if you can turn a macro into script, and that just makes it look like a script. But what's running behind a macro is just blocks of scripts that you can put together in an easy and intuitive way.
I'm gonna call it a button.
A button. There you go. Yeah.
I just made a button that sits over to the right of my trackball, and I was like, every time I was comping vocals, I'd go down, I'd find the vocal I wanted, and then I'd like chop the clip out, and then I'd paste it over to the target track.
Right.
And then I hit the tab key to go back, to go up to the next edit point so I could do the next vocal phrase. And I was like, I discovered, I was like, oh, no wonder it's taking me so long. And I was getting dizzy because I'd have to look down at my keyboard.
Yes. Huge. That's so good that you mentioned that, because that is so, like, that's part of making all those moves that take a lot of your, hand movements and eye movements. You have to look down and do this. Like, that stuff is exhausting. And then that opens up the opportunity to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to do a lot of work, if you're an assistant or you're working with something that has to do with a big pipeline of stuff, like that becomes tedious and really hard to do. So stuff like automating, it doesn't have to do with Soundflow, or Keyboard Master, just like automating the whole process is just paramount in nowadays. I think a lot of people have adopted now. So just doing it automated is the best way to do it now.
And then, of course, the other cool thing that Soundflow does is it takes over your Stream Deck. So if you've got, one of these boxes that's got the buttons on it that light up beautifully, and the box is made for, YouTube streamers and gaming streamers. That's what it's basically built for. That was a huge market, but then it gets like used for this, and then all of a sudden your desk for doing Pro Tools or whatever DAW you're using starts to look like a jet cockpit, and it's really it's a cool feeling. You're like start looking like you're, especially in a world where like everybody's got apps at home. You start looking like a pro again.
Yeah, people love the Stream Decks. That is the biggest integration right now, because there's just nothing like having some buttons, some buttons that light up and do things. It's just awesome. So a lot of people, if you see a studio with a Stream Deck, they're most likely running Soundflow, because we can do a bunch of cool things with it.
Yeah. So let's talk about your studio a little bit. Let me see. I pulled up a picture of your studio that was on your Instagram. Maybe we can actually include this picture in the, let me put it, I'll make a note to myself, picture of studio. We'll put that, see if we can stick that in the show notes or something like that. But you've got this cool layout where you got your big screen, then you got a lower screen below that. You've got what looks like a couple of different Stream Decks, but then also maybe a couple of iPads or something. And then also like the TC Electronics meter
the
bridge
Clarity
thing.
M. I love that thing.
Yeah, so just give us a little breakdown of your studio. Like what, I could ask you first, like, why do you have two screens?
Well, I've always had two screens, and I just settled. Right now I have them, one on the top and one on the bottom. Ideally, I like to have both of them the same size, but they don't fit in my desk. Yeah. So I have the lower one is a 29 inch, and the top one is a 34 ultra wide. And I've lived with that for quite a few years now, and I love that setup. It fits right between my NS stands. I'm still rocking the NS stands, and it's the one thing in the studio that I don't really feel like replacing. Like, I love the sound of NS stands. I know a lot of people have different thoughts about that, or they switch to the new ones or Amphions.
Do you like to rock a subwoofer with
Yes, that is important. But I could without it, but definitely to get the low end nowadays, you need to have a sub with it.
Where do you decide to put your subwoofer?
It's right in the middle.
Just right in the middle, right between.
Right. I've always rocked it like that. And in my room, it currently works well there.
Yeah.
So the screen fits right in between the NS stands at the perfect distance, because any wider than that, and if it starts to, it just sounds kind of weird.
If the speakers are too far away. Yeah, so like your setup is sort of like the speakers are spread out a bit, but they're also like kind of close to you.
Yes.
Not far away.
Yeah, like I dialed it in so that it's perfect. Like once you're in the sweet spot, it's kind of like wearing some big headphones.
Yeah.
They're just like great. If I get any closer, then it doesn't sound great. So I dialed it in perfectly there with the screens, and then right below it, I have two iPad minis, and that's where I started with the automation. Because I didn't. Once you start with these things, Keyboard Master or Soundflow, you don't know if you're gonna stick with it. So I had a couple of iPads. They're old, from 2015. iPad minis that you cannot upgrade the iOS. They're stuck on whatever old iOS. So I was like, okay, let me put it in here and see if I like it. So that's how I started. The cool thing about Soundflow is you can make whatever you want. We call them surfaces. So you imagine a big Stream Deck. So I just put little buttons there. Okay, let me start with this one. I want a button that renames a track. Okay, I put that one in there, and that was cool. And I put it right on top of my keyboard, my computer keyboard. So it's not too
far away. You can just reach.
Right. So it was just like, boom, you still need to look at it, but it was close enough that I can just lower my eyes, and it's not like I have to go like this or make a sudden movement to the side.
Right. Yeah, he was like reaching way over to the side to demonstrate that rock stars. But and it brings up a good point too. I feel like there are some button clicks that you need to do where you're moving fast and you need to come up with a way to not look at the button to do it. And then there's some button clicks where it's totally okay to look at it. And I feel like that's kind of the difference between whether you wanted to do a Stream Deck that's right there or whether you want to like use an iPad, right? You kind of have to look at an iPad.
Yeah. And I can give you 2 examples of that.
Yeah,
so
dude,
I love the small Stream Deck. I have both the XL, which has a grid of 8x4, and the little Stream Deck is 5x3, so 15 buttons.
Yeah, that's like the standard one, right?
Yeah, and
And I've got a mini right here.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
I got the 6-button one.
The cool thing about the 5x3, the standard, is that it has an indent in the middle button. So you kind of like the keyboard, so you can find where your F and your J.
Like there's a dot, like my keyboard has a little raised button.
Exactly. So you know, you can put your hand in on it and kind of feel where it is, and then you can make a move from there. The big one doesn't have that. So I use the little guy to do stuff like that I know I just needed a quick movement and something simple. And the perfect example of that is quantizing. I made a super simple script that just quantizes whatever I have. It could be either select the audio tracks or it could be MIDI notes. So I have it right there. It's a kind of like an extension of my computer keyboard. So with my pinky, I can just go without looking at it, I have it just a big Q for quantize.
Yeah.
And I can just do that. It's way easier than the other option, which is the default keyboard shortcut for Pro Tools is option 0, but all the way down there. So you kind of like have to do a whole movement.
Yeah.
So that never felt comfortable for me.
And that's the thing. Some of the keyboard movements like that on a regular, the Apple keyboard, you can do without looking. But a lot of them, if you pay attention, Rockstars, you'll start noticing, I have to look down and look at my hands every time I do that. And, all I would say is like, learn how to start paying attention to yourself, because that's when you begin to notice like, okay, this is a problem for me. Do you have any thoughts about that, Raphael?
Yeah.
Have you figured out good tips for people? Like, here's how you study your own style.
Yeah, I am on the camp of kind of keeping my left hand on the left side of the keyboard and your right hand on your mouse. Moving away from that position always feels like you're wasting movements. And I know it kind of sounds silly, but once you're flowing on a session, that kind of stuff adds up, like movements that are unnecessary and stuff like the quantize shortcut or anything that needs your left hand to travel outside from the left side area, let's call it. That's wasted movements. So I try to kind of consolidate all this stuff that has to happen like that into buttons on the Stream Deck or remapping keyboard shortcuts that happen on that side of the keyboard.
It used to be in OS 9. I've got the Kensington Turbo mouse, which is the big ball trackball,
Mm-hmm.
And it's got 4 buttons on it. And it used to be with OS 9, they allowed you to do modifier keys with the buttons too. So with never moving your hands, you could do, I'm not that fast at like binary math or whatever,
right,
to the power of 4, but you could do, your 4 button clicks and your 2 chords and then multiply that times, 4 more combos and then every, multi modifier key combo. So you could do a ton of stuff with never moving your hands. And then for some reason they just ditched that in OS 10.
Oh man.
And it got a little more difficult.
But, like I started with that kind of like setting up that paradigm of not having to move my hands. So currently the mouse that I'm using is a mouse from Logitech. It's called the Vertical MX. It's the ones that look funny, that you have to hold it kind of like you're shaking somebody's hand.
Right, yeah.
And I love that, by the way. That solved my wrist issues whenever you're melodining a ton.
Yeah.
That is the only mouse that has worked for me in terms of that. I used to rock a trackball before. And
I'm starting to arrive at I don't think I like my trackball anymore stage, but it might be my new chair in the studio or something.
Oh yeah, that's also important. The height that you're sitting at, that I took a lot of, I really thought about that a lot whenever my wrist started to hurt. And it was, I do melt down pretty fast.
Yeah.
You have to kind of under these deadlines. But yeah, like I was like, man, I need to find a better solution. So that's a side note. That is a great mouse. But the cool thing about it is it also has several other buttons that are not in a usual mouse. It has 2 on the side that you can kind of do. You can assign to whatever, and 1 on the top for your thumb. So I started to modify my setup so that I could use these shortcuts, or buttons as shortcuts for something else. So here are my basics. So I've always, whenever you're going to change the grid size on Pro Tools, the shortcut involves using both of your hands. That's the first one that had to go. I've played around with other DAWs and able to enhance it that you can just press a modifier and do the mouse wheel up and down, and it changes the grid size.
Oh,
so
nice.
what I did was basically take that same shortcut from Live. I think it's Option Command and then the scroll wheel up or down, and then attached it to the shortcuts from Pro Tools. So basically Soundflow is triggering the shortcuts, but I can just do it with both of my hands where they are, on the left side and on the right hand without having to move around the keyboard.
That's clever.
That one came in. I used the middle mouse button to deactivate tracks. If I add a command, I can delete them. And then the button on the top, I use it to mute or erase clips. And my favorite thing about it is that if I select a clip, but I don't select it all, and I just want to mute that particular section. Usually you need to separate and then mute it. Pro Tools doesn't allow you to do it in one shot. So I made a super simple script that does that for you. You just select, because you can only mute it if you select the whole clip.
Right.
Now I can select whatever I want, and Soundflow through the script knows that I need to first separate it and then mute it. And
yes, it's a simple thing, but that just saved you
2 moves,
looking down,
and I can do it with 1 button.
And it keeps you in the flow. That's the whole point of it. It was a clever name, just like trying to keep you in the flow of making.
And it happens so quickly, you would think it's a built-in function. To the point that whenever I go to another studio, I'm like,
that's what I was going to ask you about next.
I get confused myself. Like, I don't know what I built anymore, or, if it's not as obvious, because some of them just seem like built-in Pro Tools functions.
Now, have you leveled it up to where you've, or do you know other people that are taking their custom setup to other studios with them? I guess if it's installed in the other studio and you just bring your Stream Decks and a couple of iPad minis, you just plug it in and
yes,
you can
actually,
have the exact same setup somewhere else.
It is very easy to do it. I just haven't done it myself, but it's like you can install Soundflow, and as soon as you log in on that computer, all your stuff is automatically put on that system. All your shortcuts, all your routings. If you hook up a Stream Deck, it will light up just like you have at your own place.
Oh, and it's the logging in with your own
your account, exactly.
That'll do it. So that actually is clever, because that means, like, unlike having to bring an iLok, install a bunch of plugins somewhere and then leave, and then somebody else is like, what the hell are all these plugins doing on my computer? This is more streamlined than that. You could have, like in my studio, if I had the Stream Decks and different guest engineers coming in, just them logging into my Soundflow means they could have their setup each time.
Exactly. It will come up
very cool,
just like they have it, and it's very transparent. Let's say, a lot of people, or at least in the studio scene, they're not familiar, or I haven't seen it installed yet. But you can install Soundflow, log in, do the session, then log out and quit Soundflow, and it's just like nothing happened. And next time somebody that uses Soundflow, they just have to check if it's in the applications folder, and then launch it and log in. And
that's pretty cool.
To no harm to the studio computer or the studio setup. It's a very transparent.
Yeah, well, these do sound like the kind of things that you think about if you actually use Pro Tools and actually do sessions. You run into all these challenges where you're like,
right? Because studio owners, they don't want their stuff to change. I've gone. People contact me like, hey man, another engineer came here and he switched something. I don't know what's going on. How do I get it back to normal?
Yeah.
And I think at that case, it was the pre-fader solo, where you can set it to pre-fader or post-fader solo.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't behave the way that you expect it. So he was like, oh yeah, you just have to change the setting here. But you know, in the moment, you're like in the middle of the session, you don't know what's going on.
Empirical Labs, creators of the famous Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio pros. The Fatso adds warmth to digital recordings with harmonic generation, tape emulation, and compression. The Pump, a 500 series compressor, features 8 selectable ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, and an attack mod for incredible transient control. The Arouser and Big Freak plugins are also available at empiricallabs.com, where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects, perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X, Guitar Rig 7 Pro, and AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Does Soundflow carry preferences between DAWs too? Does it help you set up your preferences the right way for that? Or will it go in and check all the usual like solo settings and, you know, other preferences?
Oh, well, it has, there's an app called the Preference Manager, and it can, the first time you run it, it will grab all your settings. Whatever it is, you know, go to the preferences window, grab everything you have there. It will go through the different menus, check for stuff like that, like what kind of solo setting you have.
Yeah.
And then you have it stored, and then let's say you
put it on Dropbox or put it in an email to yourself.
Right. It produces a file. And then if you have a studio with other engineers coming, if they mess it up, then you can restore your settings. And it's a tedious thing. You know, before I had to do it manually, I had a notes on my notes app. I had every single setting. Or every time, you know, I would have to redo my system or whatever, I could come back to it. Now it can just do it all automatic, which is super awesome.
Yeah, I just installed it. It might be the same one. I think it's called Preference Trasher or something like that is one that I've got, which is based on the idea that sometimes to fix your Pro Tools session, you have to actually trash the press and start over.
Yes.
But it does the same thing. It'll save certain ones. Well, that stuff's clever. This is putting you on the spot, but what are some other studio automating things that you get excited about? What are some other places in the studio where you're like, I got this dialed in. It's so awesome now.
Outside of Soundflow?
Yeah, anything. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just like Soundflow. That's why we talked about it so much. Well, I think I'm talking about this too early because I haven't gone. I think I'm getting it today. But have you heard about the Flock Patch Bay? It's called Patch.
I think I saw a picture of it on your Instagram or something too. And I've heard about that stuff. I haven't used it yet, but it sounds very clever. It's like...
Yeah, it's an automated patch bay. It's, you know, goodbye, spaghetti. Those days are over. You know, I love technology and stuff like this. And this was a long time coming. Basically, now you can, with the Flock patch bay, you can use your hardware as plugins. You just hook everything up like you would on a normal patch bay on the back, and then it presents you with an app in which it looks very similar to the insert section of Pro Tools. You can drag in, you know, you label, obviously when you're setting it up, you label all your hardware, you know, your 1176s, your 38s, you put them in, and then you can drag and drop them on a chain, and that's how they will be routed. And it can do a bunch of cool stuff, like, you know, obviously in anything digital, you can do presets, you can recall different type of session, routings, all that kind of stuff. And it's something that, you know, has been in my Raider for a long time, and I finally got it. And I'm excited to put it in. Even though my setup nowadays, hardware-wise, is pretty slim, I've pretty much been in the box for the last 5 years or so. But I do love the idea of being able to reroute stuff and not having to patch it and not having to worry about recalling it. Right now, all my stuff is pre-patched and it never changes. And sometimes I would like to break it up, because I have my vocal chain. That's kind of like my main thing that has the most hardware. I have an LA610 preamp going into an LA3A into an 1176, and that's kind of like how I prep the chain in terms of compression. And then it can either go to a de-esser, it can go to an EQ if it requires some, and that I leave it optionally. But now with the Flock patch bay, I have the ability to break that up and just do it in a different way, or it allows me to experiment with it more than I would, because I'm hesitant of pulling, the patch, so maybe that, because this is all hardware. It can go wrong any day.
Yeah.
You just don't know when that patch is going to go. Or the cable itself, you just don't know. So,
well, let's back up a sec. Let's describe how to think about the signal flow. So the Flock patch bay is, instead of having patch cables on the front of it where you patch the output of this thing into the input of that thing, it just does it all internally with digital switching or something.
Exactly.
Right?
It is not...
It's controllable from the computer.
Yes. That's an important distinction. It is not converting the signal to digital. It's controlling, I guess, relays to do the routing, and that is the only part that's digital, just the controlling. But the signal is completely analog throughout the system, and that's huge, because that means no latency.
Right, and so then we get to and from the patch bay. We either take a microphone and patch straight into it somehow and then come out of it and go into a Pro Tools session or something, or we take like an input and an output of Pro Tools and send it over there and then just tell the Flock, hey, insert all these on a track. Is that kind of how it works? Or do you still, this isn't like the scenario where you take each piece of hardware gear and have its own input and output on a dedicated interface channel? Because some people do that sometimes, right?
Right. No, this is just like a normal patch bay, but it is digital control, so it doesn't really interact with Pro Tools directly. Although they do have a plugin now, and it's pretty cool because it's a plugin that you can take pictures of the gear itself for recall purposes and have it live with the session.
Oh, cool!
But it has no attachment to Pro Tools at all.
Oh, so it's got its own app or something.
Right. It's a standalone app, and that's how you do the routing. And if as soon as you close the app, that's how it stays. But yeah, you just basically patch all your gear. If you can patch mics directly to it, and that's how I plan to do it, because I use two mics. I have a SM7B as kind of like my Zoom mic, but that I tend to use for stuff just because it is very conveniently in front of me at all times.
Yeah.
And then I have my proper Neumann mic, like it's there, it's tied to the whole chain, but I almost never use it because I have to stand up, do the whole thing. So now I'm excited that I can plug both mics into the Flock and then be able to go do the SM7B through the whole vocal chain instead of having to go back, and I have the clav lifter too. So it's all plugged into the Flock, and I can, with a click of a button, I can switch between mics.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so let me back up because I'm thinking about you with an SM7 there and talking about the convenience of having it in front of you reminds me of those times when you're working in your studio and you're like, me putting the song idea down is more important than all the rest of it. So like, it can be a really good reason not to stand up and go pick a fancier mic and do all this other stuff because like, you're like, I just want to make the musical idea as fast as I can. And so it reminds me of like watching a video with Joe Gilder years ago where he was using Studio One for this, but he programmed in something where it would automatically like jump the cursor back for some pre-roll, play it up to that point, drop it into record and keep going. And that's a similar feature that Isotope, the Spire Studio, which is a discontinued product, but it's something I liked about the way the app functioned, where it's like when you're in a songwriting flow, you don't want to have to go click 5 settings, and you don't want to be asked questions before you go and record. You just want to hit a button and keep going. Like if you're an engineer and you're working with somebody and they mess up, and you've got the like mind speak going, but between the two of you, then you know to hit stop, back up, drop it in, start playing the phrase before, and the singer knows that you just did that, and they're going to just start singing again, right from where the mess up was, right?
Right.
And it's like if you're recording yourself, you want to be able to do that. So if that description makes sense to you, how would we set something like that up using Soundflow, for example?
Oh man, there's so many ways. Like so many ways you could do automation. I can tell you some of my favorites. So there's so many that I've implemented to do that kind of stuff. Just speed up your workflow. And one of them, I have on the Soundflow store, I have a free package that has my favorite stuff that I use, and I just give it away for free for everybody to use, because it's just, whenever I talk about it on interviews and whatever, like people want to know about it. It's like, here it is. This is my stuff. So I update it. And one of them is making a new track with a track preset. And what that does, it just like the name says, it'll create a new track with a preset track preset. So on my iPads, I have all my favorite stuff. Like if I'm going to track guitar, the way that I track guitar is through an audio track that is just for the tracking, and then I drag and drop it, the recording, to where the place where they live, like the tracks that they will play back off, if that makes any sense.
Remember, say that again. I don't think I quite picture it.
So basically, I have a recording. Let's call it the recording track. A lot of people do this for vocals, and that's where I got it from. And there you can have your monitoring set up the way that you like it. You can have, the guitar sound with a delay, and usually the volume way louder than it would be on the mix.
Right, because you're overdubbing. You want to.
Right, you want to, whenever you're playing or singing or performing, you want to hear louder. At least that's how it is for me.
Yeah.
So I have that track. And then when I record it, I drag the clip that was just recorded down to let's say the mixed channels, that is way lower in the mix. Well,
maybe
in the mix,
pan to the left.
pan to the left, pan to the right, and I've always loved that workflow both for vocals and guitar. So like you said, like I want that monitoring track to be right in the middle and pretty loud
while
I'm tracking. But then once I drag it down, I want it to live in the mix. So that's how I have it. So I have a button that will create, if it's not already in the session, it will create that guitar track with all the stuff that I have on it. I have a clean setting, I have a dirty setting, I have all the stuff that I need there. And
that'd be like a virtual instrument guitar.
Yeah, I use all guitar rig, all digital stuff at this point.
And then what about guitar rig? That's cool. That's the native instruments.
Yeah, like a lot of people. I mean, there's way better stuff nowadays, but that's the one.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best tool is the one that you know the best, and that is just.
And what's cool about those, you can dial in all kinds of sounds. Now do you have to be smart about your buffer setting for the session so the latency is sort of as low as possible while you're recording?
So I've lived at 256 my whole career, and that, even though it has a tiny little bit of latency, I've gotten used to it. 256 is no different than having an amp 4 or 5 feet away from you in terms of latency. So that I've gotten used to it, and to me is normal. So I don't have to think about that. I know a lot of people, they go back to 128 or 64. When I was coming up, my computers couldn't handle that. That was impossible. And I didn't have an HDX system till way later. So I just got used to the 256. Pro Tools has a setting called the low latency setting.
Yeah.
And as long as that track is going to the main outputs, it will lower the latency as much as possible.
Yeah. Right. And then, so if you're recording on a track that's a virtual amp, and then you're going to drag this guitar part down to another track, do you have a clever way to sort of commit the sound of the guitar amp before you drag it down to the other track? Or are you dragging down a DI version of the guitar and you have the same amp on the other track too?
Exactly. I have, on my template, I have different types of guitar sounds. I always track with one particular guitar sound unless it's a very specific thing. Like if it's a very spacey, verby thing, then I have another preset for that. But most of the time, if it's just dirty guitar, I just play with the setting that I love to play. It has a ton of low end.
Yeah.
Usually you cut that off during the mix. But I love, like the sound of a real amp, a lot of low end, especially when you palm mute. That's the one that I play in, but then it lives on the tracks that are pre-mixed. And then depending on the session, I have different types of tracks with different settings. But the cool thing is if I don't have them, let's say, and this is important, 'cause with templates, they help you up to a certain point. But what if you don't want that sound anymore, right, or you want something new? Well, I have a button that will create two guitar tracks, label them guitar and a number. So let's say I already have guitar 3 and 4 in the session. It'll through the session know that it's guitar 5 and 6 that it will create. And then it will pound them left and right, and it will put guitar rig, just an empty guitar rig. And then I can quickly put the settings that I want.
Sound or whatever.
And that way I can start from scratch on that sense without any pre-mixed stuff, which is huge because all that stuff that I just said takes a lot of mouse clicks.
Yeah.
So just having a button that will kind of get you to the point where you can tweak the sound yourself, that is huge.
And imagine yourself in a situation where maybe you're working with a client and they're behind your back looking over your shoulder. And if you're moving so fast, you just hit a button, it's like, and you're putting in stuff. It's such a different experience for working with somebody else too, than if they're watching you sit there and mouse click and go like, where'd they put the, squinting at the computer? I'm a good computer squinter at this stage of my life too,
Yeah, like I've used that method and there's many more, but just that one, the recalling or creating a track with track preset is the one probably that I use the most. I use that with preset stuff on my iPad for the stuff that I like, because when I started doing the composing, it is typical that a composer might have a huge template. I'm talking like 300, 500, 1,000 tracks in one session.
Wow.
That hasn't worked out for me because it is really hard to manage that amount of tracks. And having all that stuff, you might not use 90% of it on a given project. I found that was the case for me. I never really use all of it. So currently my setup is just the stuff that I use the most, which is usually tracks for drums, tracks for guitar, bass, and a few for vocals. I start there, and then I build the template as I need the things. And where it was tedious before you would have to import session data from another session that you liked. Then they brought the track presets. Now you can do it way quicker, but you still have to go through the menu and go through, okay, here it is. But now you can have them preset on an iPad or a Stream Deck, the stuff that you like. Like, let's say, okay, I want some ethnic percussion on this session. There you go, boom. And no, if you need that ethnic percussion, you just press a button, it's right there, and you're ready to play. It would just, from one moment to the other. But I have another one that allows you to search for track presets. Because now, as you can imagine, I have accumulated a good amount of track presets. I just want a box to show up and I can type in drums, and then I see kind of like a layout of the drums that I've saved throughout time. And then, okay, let me try that one that I tried in 2019. Let's just see. Oh, well, this sounds pretty good. I guess I did good on that one.
That's awesome.
Did you know that one of the most common fears with audio mastering is not knowing if your mix is ready or not? Look, nobody wants to send a mix in for mastering only to realize there's some resonating low end that's going on that wasn't picked up in the mix. That's where I come in. Hi, I'm Brian Murphy of Soundporter Mastering. As soon as you send a mix for me to listen to, I'm already on your team. Mix feedback and master readiness is a service I offer for free and for good reason. That's because a great mix produces an even greater master. So if I can help you minimize oddities and issues and even provide some advice that will help your mix translate better, then mastering becomes more efficient and effective. And you don't stress about those issues at all. Just go to soundporter.com. There you can find videos, a FAQ, and a pre-mastering checklist on my website that will explain a lot of what you need to know. When you're ready for great feedback, just reach out via my low-friction contact form and send me a mix to hear. Again, you can find me at soundporter.com.
Are you sick of searching for the right cable only to realize it doesn't even exist? Or maybe you're asking yourself, how in the world do I hook my studio up? Well, say goodbye to those headaches because Trace Audio can get you wired up right. Based in Nashville, but serving studios nationwide and around the world, Trace Audio specializes in custom cables, labels, and wiring solutions. From labeling your patch bay to wiring your full studio or large format console, Trace Audio does it all, whether you're a home or pro studio owner. And the real game changer is Trace Audio's custom patch bay label designer. It's a one-stop tool to color code, organize, and design labels for your quarter-inch or XLR patch bays. No more wondering where things are on your patch bay, when instead you can have sleek, professional labels that are easy to read and easy to use. Try the free online patch bay label designer at traceaudio.com and use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom labels and take your studio to the next level. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, a.k.a. the second half of the show. My guest today is Raphael Sepulveda, dude with the coolest name, joining me here at Podzilla, at Pod Dammit Studios. You ready to jam, man?
Was that?
Are you ready to jam?
Hell yeah.
So one thing I wanted to point out is when you're talking about these setting up, one button to access stuff that's kind of a pain to get to otherwise. The other cool part about it is, especially when you use a Stream Deck, actually it doesn't even matter. If you're using the iPad, you've got the graphics. So you can have a picture of something that looks right to you. What is the easiest way to swap out the little button icon and make a picture of something that looks cool? If you're going to pull up a guitar preset, you can have a word in there or you could have some image, right?
Yeah, most people, and what I do is I just take a screenshot of it or the logo or how the GUI looks on the plugin.
Yeah, something that you'd immediately recognize.
And then you copy, and then you can paste it right into where the icon goes. And that's as easy as that. You don't have to do any graphic design or anything like that. I actually have an easier than that. I go by colors. Since I do my stuff on the fly most of the time, I just have different colors. Like I have blue, orange, and depending on the subgroups that I use, I have a whole section just of subgroups. If it has to do with drums, it's brown. If it has to do with guitars, it's light blue, stuff like that. And that, to me, is the easiest way to do it.
That's pretty cool. And that helps. I hate it, but I kind of have to think about everything in terms of reading glasses or not these days. So like my screen's out in front of me where I don't have my glasses on when I'm looking at the Pro Tools session. But then every time I have to look down at the keyboard or at like the buttons, I might have to have my glasses on. Then I've got that, old man look where I'm looking over my glasses while I'm working, But like simple stuff like having colors down there where even if it's like a little fuzzy to me, I can see it easily. That stuff is a big game changer. It makes a big difference. And
also position-wise, because I know what you're saying. Like I'm getting older. I am finding myself zooming in to the plugins and stuff like that. So yes, the text on the Stream Decks can be a little small for you to actually read it in the heat of the moment.
Well, sometimes if you type, it's like if you type in a word and then the font changes when it goes on the button, it gets smaller and you're like, it's too small or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes you have to be a little more descriptive to see what the function of the button. So I tend to kind of put them in different regions. That's where the iPad is really good because you can push everything to the upper right that has to do with admin stuff.
Right.
Then on the lower left, like navigation stuff. And then you can put the colors there to kind of differentiate depending on the groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to split. I don't have my iPad filled with stuff. I just have them kind of living in their own world in terms of categories and stuff like that.
Well, if we've been using Pro Tools for a while, then we're used to the craziness with naming. Cause like forever ago, I was like, can't name it what I want to call it. I'm going to have to like come up with a shorthand code and then it's only going to show me the capital letters of whatever the track name is anyway, right? So you get used to that stuff. All right. So let me back up a sec. So I love hearing about your automated workflows for what works for you. Let me throw this at you. I've got two questions for you. I'm going to go back to the vocal one. And I don't want to put you on the spot about this is exactly the button pushes, but more like, because you use this stuff all the time, you might be like, this is how I would think about doing it so that we can understand it. So let's say we just wanted to make a button that, let me think. Let's say we want to make a button that says, okay, your cursor is right here. Maybe I stopped and I stopped my cursor after the vocal was good, and now I need to punch in and do the next vocal. If I was going to program a button that would make the cursor go back a little bit in Pro Tools and play like the phrase leading up to it and then drop into record and keep going, how would you think about something like that?
I would probably leverage the pre-roll function on Pro Tools. And that's something that I actually explored for a bit. You know how you want to use pre-roll, right, to record, but once you record, you don't want pre-roll, you want to kind of disable it because you want to listen to the take, not including the pre-roll. You just want to listen to the thing you recorded.
Pre-roll never gets a break. You're always pissed at pre-roll. It's either off when you needed it to be on, or it's on when you wish it was off.
So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I remember
pre-roll.
building a button that will, I think I call it record, and it will, whenever I'm going to record it, it makes sure that pre-roll is activated. You do the whole pass, and as soon as Pro Tools stops, I made a second button called stop. It disables pre-roll, and then you can listen to whatever you want, or re-record, or to answer your question, like let's say you wanted to do the pre-roll, record, and then do just another take immediately after. You can set up that same one that I just told you about, and then once you hit it, it'll go back to where it was with the pre-roll.
So it's like you do these steps in Soundflow where the first thing you do is you'd engage pre-roll, and that would just be an option in the menu or something like
Right.
that,
The first thing that I would do is check if it's already on, because that's important to just kind of like make sure that the flow.
And that's something it can do. It can check the state of something.
Yes, and that is huge, because that way you minimize the steps that something needs to do. Because if it's already on and that's how you want it, then you don't need to do any clicking or any action on the button itself. So first check that it's on. If it's on, cool. If it's not, turn it on. And then if we're going to record, start recording. And there's a command just for like that, just to record.
Go into record, because when there's pre-roll on, it will play up to the record point and then drop into record at that point, because that's what it already does in Pro Tools.
Right.
When there's pre-roll engaged.
Right. So then you do your pass, and then you stop. You're cool. Sometimes, depending on the situation, for example, if I'm doubling guitars, if I feel like the first take was cool, I want to go right at the double. Like I want to record the double as soon as I stop, playing. So I remember I set up one, and I don't know why I don't use it anymore. I guess there's so many macros that I made, but I remember I had a button. Okay, I like the take that I have. It would stop recording, drag the clip, because I told you about my workflow of dragging the clips down.
Oh, it'll do that. It'll drag a clip for you.
Do that, and then restart the recording with the pre-roll. I record. If it's cool, then I hit the stop button, and then it will take off the pre-roll, and I can listen to the take starting at the beginning where I started recording.
To hear both doubles together and see what
exactly.
Yeah, wow.
Not
that
including
does speed things up.
Right, yeah. And that, that was huge. And I should probably bring that back.
Well, the cool thing about that is it's like, again, it's that being in the flow of the music you're making. So let's say you played your guitar and you did, the one chorus or something like that, and you felt good about it. By having one button where you hit it and it does that pulling the thing down, setting you up and dropping you in a record again, that lets you keep your brain in the space of thinking like, all right, I've got my hands, I'm sitting just right in my chair, my hands are just right, I know exactly how I'm feeling this. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, that's the stuff that's important when you're making music. It's like, when I'm doing background vocals now, like I've finally learned that, that the speed of doing it is so crucial. And like the thing I should be focused on is like just how far I'm sticking my gut out while I'm like, using my diaphragm to sing with or whatever. Or like whether my head's pointed up at the ceiling a certain angle, because that's the kind of track layer I'm doing. And just like, and trying to go fast because I want to stay in that zone.
Oh yeah, for that, it is so good. Especially the exact example that you're giving me with background vocals. Like once you get in the flow, I find that I don't even need to check the takes. I know, like just listening. I'm the kind of guy, I monitor my own voice live, like I don't really listen because I'm always way louder than I feel comfortable boosting my headphones on. So I just listen to myself as I'm singing. And if I feel like it went well, I would just go right to the next one. And then next, usually I do for the main vocal, like 4 layers of the same thing. And then if I do a harmony, I can already hear the harmony coming. So even if I haven't practiced or anything, I will go ahead, do the harmony. If it felt good, I will continue. And if it doesn't happen always, but I could do a whole stack in one shot and and then I listen to it. But with the buttons, you can just keep pressing one button. Take me to the next track. Take me to the next track. Just keep recording. Something that, you would have to have both of your hands on the mouse and keyboard to do that.
All right, so let me throw another curveball at you. A lot of times when I'm doing vocals like that, I do go out to the stand-up mic out in the other room because my studio is set up kind of like that traditional where you got a tracking space and the recording space. And then I use a laptop as a remote control screen share. Do you know if this might be too advanced a question without trying it, but do you know if some of the like Stream Deck stuff would still trigger over a screen share from a laptop? Like if I plugged the Stream Deck into it's probably too tacky of a question unless you've done it.
Well, I would say no, because the Soundflow would be running on your studio computer and not through the remote computer.
Oh, but wait, I'm going to take that back. Can't the iPad talk over Wi-Fi?
Yes, that's where I was going.
Ah, sweet.
You can just if you have your iPad plugged into power, you can just remove it and take it to your live room, and you can put up anything you want there. Or you can put pre-built Stream Deck layouts, or you can have a Surface, and you can run your whole session from there.
That's super cool. So there could be macros that you only need when you're going out onto the floor to record yourself playing an instrument, and you just like customize the iPad where it's like super easy to hit those 4 buttons or whatever.
All this stuff that will take multiple clicks, like the what I just described.
And then the laptop, which is really handy. Rockstars, if you haven't done this yet, but Mac, I mean, quite a while ago, it used to be complex to use a laptop to remote control your Mac. And I remember our mutual friend, Matt Mahaffey, he's one of the first people I talked to about this stuff. And back in the day, you used to have to use Timbuktu was a third-party app, and you even had to have your Mac plugged in over Ethernet for it to even work. Your laptop to control the other one.
Right.
And now it's like Mac's just built-in screen share. You just pull it up on your laptop and you see the whole Pro Tools session, which is great, but it's still kind of a pain because it ends up like looking smaller on your laptop.
Right. And, the screen resolution,
weird. So like if you had that where you had just a visual and you could see the recorded tracks a little bit to confirm that it was doing the right thing, but then you had like your iPhone in your hand and you just got the button that just says make next track and hit record. That stuff could be really handy.
Oh yeah. And that's a good point that you brought up. You can pull up Soundflow even on your phone and without having, you just have to download the app and that's it. And it's up and going. And it can show whatever you have, whatever you're showing on your Stream Deck or whatever you're showing on your iPad just as easily. So,
all right. You ready for the next big curveball? This one's a fastball, man.
All right, let's go.
All right. So when I do the podcast mixing, when I go into that, I do everything in sprints. So I do a bunch of interviews. Then when it's time to do the podcast stuff, I like record all my in-between ads and stuff like that. And I turn them into blocks. And then I take the interview and I chop it up into like 7 different blocks. And then I've got all these blocks of audio that are like clip groups. So they look like a big block might go across a few tracks, but they're on different tracks. And then I sort of assemble things in series. So like there's an intro block that's got everything I need on it. And then, there might be a marker. And now my voice comes and, I have to keep my voice and your voice always in sync, because otherwise you get weird, echo delays between our tracks if they ever slip out of sync. But like that block might snap forward to the marker at the end of the first block, and then I have to go to the end of that block, and then I snap the other block up to that. So I'm like snapping blocks together. Does that kind of make sense?
Right.
So it's like intro, then first talking, then break, a block for the break with some music, then next talking. And so, I use stuff like I might pre-mark things, and then I'll tab over to it, and then I'll go to the next block that I want to snap into place. And if I think it's control click, if I control click on it, now it snaps like almost like shuffle mode. It snaps up to the end of the last piece. If I wanted to program something like that into my Soundflow, how might I think about doing it?
Okay, so let me ask you something. So you have the podcast, you've already edited, right? So it's basically already
just
cleaned out.
A bunch of blocks that need to be just assembled, and like
you basically want to have them come together.
Yeah, but they're on separate tracks.
Oh, they're on separate tracks. Okay. Yeah. Well, that does not matter, because we can actually, the first thing I would do is a script that selects all the tracks that are relevant, or you could do it yourself. That could be your starting point. Just select the tracks that we need. Let's say it's you and the speaker and maybe some background music, and then you have them. Then I would go ahead and select all, so that all the clips are selected. And now, and this is actually new, fairly recently, we now have direct access to all the clips on the timeline, and specifically the name, the track that it belongs to, their starting and end points.
Nice.
And then combined with another new feature that allows you to move stuff to a specific place in the timeline up to the sample level, which is the part that is interesting for us. And so we can take the values of every clip and with some clever scripting, figure out where there's that space, and kind of, let's say that there's no clip between the first clip and the second clip. And we know that based on the end value of the first clip and the starting point of the next clip. If that is true, there's a different value between the start and the end of another one, then we bring the second one to the first one, or the end to the starting point of the second clip to the end point of the first clip. And I hope all that makes sense. But basically, that would allow you to to join those two together, and then we analyze the second clip and the third clip. Does that happen? If it happens, then we join them too. If not, then we just leave them where they are.
Clever, cool.
And then just go through all of them. And it doesn't really matter where they land on the timeline in terms of tracks, because it's just looking, as long as they're not, because there will only be one clip at a time, right? As long as there's not two of them, then it will line them up together, which in this case, that's how it would be.
Yeah, and they might be arranged a little weird on the screen beforehand, But I mean, again, not to get too deep into the weeds on this, but it's cool to hear the way you think about it. That's what I was hoping for. Is
using the data
thought process,
the data that's available to us. Before we didn't have as much data, but now, and this has to do with the Pro Tools SDK that Avid has provided, and that is talking directly to Pro Tools, which was like the biggest thing. We used to dream about having this situation, and now we have commands that instead of trying to navigate the UI like I talked about before, we're talking directly to Pro Tools to do things like this and fetch information, not just about the clips, but about the tracks and where they are, what color they are. And from then on, you can script whatever you want because we have the information.
At Atom Audio is proud to announce the new D3V active desktop monitor system and H200 dynamic closeback studio headphones designed in Berlin and perfect for pro-level monitoring in a home studio setting. The D3V is a fully active desktop monitoring system featuring 3.5-inch woofers and hand-folded ribbon tweeters for studio-quality sound in a compact form in elegant white or black finish. It's perfect for songwriters, producers, podcasters, and mixers with digital input over USB-C or balanced analog inputs, and includes a headphone output and DSP room acoustic switches. The H200 is Atom Audio's new closed-back studio headphone, featuring 40mm peak drivers and memory foam ear pads in a durable metal construction with a detachable main cable for dual-sided connectivity, making the H200s reliable for demanding studio use. With an impedance of just 32 ohms, they will sound great with your studio or laptop and include a plug-in for enhanced tonal control and stereo spatialization, so you never have to leave the sweet spot. To see the new D3V monitors and H200 headphones, go to atomaudio.com. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks or mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music, and EQ curve referencing a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma Ozone RX or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. So that means that there's two ways to think about it. There's a way that I might start where I'm like, okay, what are the buttons that I do to do this myself? And then I'm trying to figure out how to create a macro that recreates all the button flows. But then there's that deeper level that you're talking about where it's just like, if you understand how to access the, the internal data, and if it's connected, then you can start doing some really advanced macros. Now, does that, when you get into that level, I assume you have to start understanding the coding stuff, or you start interacting, or like we're like, yo, Raphael, I got an idea.
The best way to do stuff like that is to reach out on the forum, and there's people like me that are more than willing to help you, no matter. To me, I find it interesting when they're complicated, because that's how I practice. I obviously do my own macros and whatnot, but I've gone pretty far with that. And when I see somebody requesting something that I would not technically, I wouldn't really approach just because it's not my workflow, but I just want to do it, just see if I can do it. I'm always down to help.
Now, what if somebody somebody comes to you and they're just like, yo, Raphael, I like hearing you talk about this stuff. Can I just hire you to develop a macro?
Yes,
do you get hired sometimes?
Yes.
Does that happen?
You can hire any of us through the Soundflow. We have like a scripting service.
Oh, great.
And that's, people that are vetted to be able to do it. That's the best way to do it. Just, that way you get guaranteed. We have deep understanding of the capabilities and limitations of Soundflow. So that would be the first thing to try.
That's super cool. So Rockstars, if you're going into that world and you're like hearing this and you're thinking, that all sounds cool, but I've got my way of doing things. What I need is, blah, blah, blah. You could probably go in there and contact Raphael or one of the other guys and just start working on your custom build. We live in a world of Zoom and stuff like that too. So I assume
it's very easy.
We just have a chat over a video and see a screen and see it work if you need to and all that. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you for tackling all those questions.
Absolutely.
Let's pivot over to talking about this cool stuff you're doing with, creating commercial music too. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, what is it? What does it mean to you to create commercial music versus producing, a band's record? How is that similar or different in your world?
Oh, okay. So in terms of composing, it is way faster paced than it will be a record. That is number one, the biggest difference. The deadlines are very fast paced, and you are composing at lightning speeds. And that is, when I started doing composing, that is when I needed automation to come into play. That was the main motivation to get me going, because I was seeing all these other guys and they were making music way faster than I could. I'm used to taking, somewhat of my time making a record. It's a process that takes several months. But here, we're pretty much delivering a song or 2 tracks a day.
Several hours, maybe at max.
And it's all about, when you're composing, it's just whatever the first idea is, that's the one you're going with. Because there's really no time to experiment, or very little time. So that was by far wow, I felt like I needed to get some critical thing going that would speed up my workflow way faster than it was before.
What do you feel like if somebody was like, that sounds fun to me? So first of all, I would say I love the idea of running with your first idea. It's my favorite way to songwrite. It's my favorite way to do stuff, because a lot of times the first idea is a great idea for a good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, dreams are first ideas,
Absolutely. And you actually, that's how you start to trust yourself. It's like, okay, yeah. You start to hear the song in your head. It's like, yeah, I can see this going all the way through. Let me just do it. And that way you can meet the deadline. Because sometimes it's about, when you have a client, and they're going to get a ton of submissions from other people, not just your music house. So sometimes getting in early, they might grab your demo, put it on whatever they're working with, and that becomes the temp track.
Right.
And something with temp track is just the same thing as demoitis. They might just be like, I don't know, man, whatever you sent first with that track, that sounds better, man. Let's just get these guys. And all that happens just because you sent a good track earlier than everybody else.
Yeah.
So I tried to do that, just get the idea in. Most of the time, if I overthink it, it doesn't end up being any better. So through iterations and iterations, I found that it's actually something that benefits the whole process.
If I'm remembering this correctly, it was an interview with Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo. Hopefully I'm saying all that right. Years ago, I was listening to him talk about doing composition stuff. And he said a similar thing. He said, get your music to the video editors, because, nobody's busting down their door, but they're the ones who are placing in a temporary track while they're creating the thing. And if they use that and they edit around it, and it's like nothing else seems to fit because yours was just right. And then, all the rest of it was made to that
Exactly.
temp track. So that's cool to hear you talk about that too. So now, but let me back up. So you already had a style for producing records the way you would produce them, the rock records and stuff like that. And then you switch over to this composition, and maybe you go through some thinking like, okay, I know some of the stuff I want to do, but I have to be faster at it. I have to be more automated, or I have to learn how to trust my first idea. What would you say to somebody who's like, that sounds fun, but where do I begin? Like, do you think if you didn't know how to make a rock record yet, would you have to start there before you could even figure out how to do the composition stuff? Like, how do you want to give advice to somebody who's interested in getting into this?
I would start there. Definitely, I don't see it any other way. You have to have a handle on a certain style or how to make music to begin with, just because you're applying music to film or media basically. So there, I find that it's another layer of complexity, because then you have to sync with certain points. You have to kind of match certain moods. And that starts to sound a little less musical depending on what you're working with. Commercials, it's 30 seconds. So you have to deliver a whole point in 30 seconds. That's pretty quickly. So you would find that, in a song, you have time to do a whole verse, a whole chorus. We're talking about a super edited version of all that. And to do that, I think you need to come from first doing the full length stuff in order to be able to compress it down to its kind of like condensed form.
Yeah. So like, I like what you said too about the whatever your style. So I think it's a good reminder, right? Like maybe there is a crossover between like, what do you bring? What's your own voice and what's needed? And it's like a meeting of those two things. Did you find, like, if you came into this with an indie rock interest, did you find that you're like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to start learning how to do some hip hop beats or something like that? How does that feel?
Oh yeah, and and the track that I've won a couple awards with, that was outside of my comfort zone. It was a Latin inspired thing. Even though I am from Latin America, I am the punk rock kid regardless. But I know what the style's supposed to sound like, what authentic Latin music sounds like. But I have never done it myself, so I had to go in, do the research, the different types of drums that are used, the different type of styles, tempos, and all that kind of stuff. Once I had that under my belt, through plain old research, just practicing with different styles, then I would apply it to the picture. And that particular ad that was for Buchanan's, it was for the World Cup. That one was fairly complicated because it involved coming up with a track that then they will take as kind of like a guide and go to these 4 different countries and film, because they wanted vocals from the film set to be in the ad itself, in the audio.
Wow.
So they wanted some sort of a guide, kind of like a general idea based on the brief. They will go in, film it. When they filmed it, even though I sent different ways for them to keep the tempo, obviously they're human beings, and we were talking about like 20, 30 people on set. They were not going to keep track of like a click track, and they didn't want to deal with that. So what they ended up doing was have somebody off screen kind of start a chant. This particular thing was a chant that they wanted to have the actual thing on as it was filmed. So somebody off screen will start the chant. The people on set will continue it. And whatever happens at the end of it, whatever tempo, whatever key they're on, that's what it ended up being. So I had, once they came back with all the footage, that's what I had to work with. So I had to reconform the music with variable tempos so that it all sounded like they were just performing it with the music at the same time.
All right, that's cool. That's going to take us to a place that I wanted to chat about. You mentioned Melodyne earlier. Is that one of the tools that you, like Daisy the studio dog came in to join us and just shaked on the microphone, so you might have got to hear that, Rockstars. So Melodyne, though, is that a tool you use? Do you mess around with any other ones? Like Vocaline is one that I've seen used. I haven't used it in quite a while. Oh
yeah, Melodyne. I would say that Melodyne is one of the best tools that ever existed.
Yeah, so that is I've used that before to try and do something similar where we had vocals done out at different tempos, and I had to like dial it in, bring it back into a master session.
Let me tell you, Melodyne has the best time stretching. Obviously Melodyne is for tuning vocals mainly, but it has the best time stretching algorithm that ever was. And now that we have it in Pro Tools as Aura, that lives in the session, I was able to, one of the challenges that I had while doing the ad that I was just talking about, the Buchanan's ad, at the beginning of that track, there are some background vocals that me and my wife did. And I remember, so I had them all loaded up on Melodyne, and then they had a revision about it. They wanted it to be more like the temp track. which is, a common thing that you'll find in sync. And what that involved was speeding up the whole thing a little bit. And before that would have been like a whole process, but when Melodyne loaded up in Aura, I could just change the tempo of the whole session,
Pro Tools session,
and it will just do it on its own. And we could have done that with polyphonic, the algorithm, the polyphonic algorithm, or one of the more advanced ones. But this one just did it way cleaner than those solutions. Especially at the end, I needed to stretch out a note way longer than I sang it, and I could have at that point just re-sung the whole thing because I was lucky that I sang it myself. But if I didn't have the singer, for example, I was able to stretch that note way more than any other thing would allow for without any audible artifacts.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, when Melodyne first appeared, the very first demo, and this is like 2003 when I discovered it, it was like a trumpet, and they just stretched the trumpet way out, and you're like,
oh yeah, I remember that demo. Yeah, it was like voodoo. Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, and then I got into it and started using it, and then I can't remember if it was right away that you had Melodyne Studio or that showed up later, and I got into that deep, and I still use it. And I think I was learning again recently that in your so Rockstars, he said Pro Tools Aura or ARA, how it's pronounced, but that's the feature that lets you load some of these plugins directly into the Pro Tools session, and it sort of instantly loads the audio, I think.
Right, before you have to go through a transfer process, but that means basically record it into Melodyne, then you can edit it, and then you have to print it. Now you can just put it on any track, and it will load up instantly all the vocals, so you can go right into editing them, and then once you're done, you can commit them.
And I think if you have Melodyne Studio, then if you have the Melodyne plugin on 12 vocal tracks, it shows all 12 will show up in the one window down below. So you can kind of edit them and line them up and do all the things you want to do to it, which is handy. And if you don't, then I think it's a little different. I think you have to open multiple windows or something like that.
Yeah, but I would just go with the studio. Because that is the only way. To do a lot of background vocals, you need to make sure that all of them are singing the same line. And, even though vocal line for timing is superior, I still do it on Melodyne. Sometimes I feel like sometimes something might not sound aligned because they're not approaching a note the same way. Mm-hmm. So you can massage the approach to a note and have it sound more cleaner, more aligned in a way.
Yeah, you've got like granular level control over each vocal. I was just learning new tricks I didn't even know were in there. That's what I love doing about this stuff. That's why I like doing this podcast too, is like, I've been making records for 35 years and I'm still learning new stuff all the time,
Yeah, especially with Pro Tools. Out and you're like, there's so many features in Pro Tools, like there's no way to learn it, and I used to be the guy that would read the manual every year just to see like what's new, that's hidden. That's how I found that you can actually redraw the waveform. I don't know if you knew that, but you can. Yeah,
I've done that before. That's how we used to fix pops and clicks.
Right. I didn't know that. I was like, wow. And I learned that by reading the manual. It's like, you can, and for people that have never listened to this before, you have to zoom in all the way. It only works if you have the pencil tool zoomed in all the way as far as it goes. Then you can go at it and paint your waveform.
Let me save you a whole lot of headaches, Rockstars. Just get Isotope D-Click.
Yes, those.
We need a D-Daisy shake plugin. Isotope, let's work on that. But yeah, D-Click. It just takes the pops and the clicks and the mouth noises out so easily. Because again, like you said, we used to have to draw those out by hand, and it's not easy. And then, I almost bought one of those tablets with a pencil on it just to make the drawing easier. Because
the
it was trying to do it with a mouse was kind of impossible. Yeah, Wacom tablets. Elevate your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your creative vision to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, crafting deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with unique sound design, Complete 15 has got you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound even further. Then, polish off your mixes with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11, included in the Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Empirical Labs, creators of the iconic Distressor, offer high-performance gear for audio professionals. The Fatso, or Full Analog Tape Simulator and Optimizer, brings the warmth of vintage tape and tube electronics to your digital recordings. Perfect for mixes, masters, or overdubs by adding harmonic generation, high-frequency saturation, tape emulation, and compression. The impressive new Pump, a 500 series classic knee compressor, shares its DNA with the analog Distressor and Arouser plugin. It features 8 selectable compression ratios, precise attack and release controls, saturation, a high-pass filter, and a first-time ever attack mod for added transient control, which is ideal for adding more snap to your snare drum. All Empirical Labs products are hand-assembled and tested right down to the circuit boards in northern New Jersey, USA for durability and performance designed to last and be easily updated. Go to empiricallabs.com to find the Arouser and Big Freak plugins where you can use the coupon code RSR10 for 10% off. Remember to follow at Empirical Labs on Instagram, making studio gear that works a little easier, a little better, and a lot longer. So that's cool. So any other, like if somebody's going to do a vocal thing like that where they're needing to change some stuff, they can't quite predict how they're going to sing it or chant it or record it, what advice do you want to give them to help them shortcut so they have an easier time doing it all?
Well, definitely what I did was the best approach. It was just try to get them some sort of guide. And what I did, I sent both a click and some sub hits, so that the idea behind that was that if you didn't want the click track to be audible on the mics, you could send a pulse. I'm talking like 40 hertz. And at least that you can high pass. To a certain degree, obviously, if you're pumping it really loud, it will shake the stuff on the set, and that will become audible, but at least it'll be better than an actual loud click. Yeah, I send a clap, I send an actual click track. But
that's super clever. So you're saying a low frequency tone pulse that'll play back off some speaker on the set.
Yes.
It'll go into their mics, but it's low enough, or it's enough of a sound that they would just instinctively feel it as if we're like, you're like,
so they can feel like, yeah, dun, 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 and they can go off that and at least kind of get some sort of tempo. So
but you can easily just filter it out later.
Yes, that was the thought process, but they ended up doing the whole thing like that. But the challenge, I feel like the way that I approached it was just to embrace whatever they did, because the performance was good. You know, it was high energy, the way that it was intended in the commercial, and I just had to go in and redo my stuff around that. Which, you know, a little tempo mapping, you know, just do that and retrack anything that needs to be retracked. In this case, we had 4 variations of the commercial, and it was filmed in 4 different countries. So I had to reshape the whole thing 4 times, depending on the performance that they did.
Wow.
But now, if you watch it now, like I watch it now, and I can't tell if it has a tempo change, because it's very natural the way that it came about. And also, you know, you can tempo map it, but I wasn't hitting the grid perfectly.
Talk about tempo mapping in case rock stars haven't tried that yet. What are you talking about?
So tempo mapping is basically taking let's say a live performance, something that was tracked with no click, and going in and finding all of the downbeats and kind of making a map of what the tempo was. So that can be, you know, it can start at 120 and drift slowly to the 118 and then all of a sudden to 122. And it just goes on and off, you know, the grid like that. And then you end up the song. So with that, you can bring in other musicians and they have a guide. You know, the click now is following the performance. You can either do that or you can flatten a performance. And that's something that I've done whenever some people hire me to do covers of songs. And if it's an old song, you know, it wasn't tracked to a click. So we do tempo mapping and then we conform it to one tempo. So basically the average of what it was. And that is great. You know, most modern music, you know, depending on the style, is going to be locked to the grid. So,
yeah.
So those are the two use cases of a tempo, variable tempo.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you can do things like have a real drum track and then just tell it to automatically like tempo map it, and you look up at your ruler and you're like, oh my God, there's like 50 different, there's 1,000 tempo changes for every bar, which was kind of cool. And I'd occasionally experiment with like, let's make the live drums the thing to quantize everything else to.
Right.
And you can try and do stuff like that. I guess it's hit or miss. It's try things and see if you like the results.
Yeah, usually, you know, you do the process, and then depending if it sounds funky or not, you don't have to follow the grid. It really depends on, you know, if it was a band that played, it could be that the downbeat was not hit by the drummer, but rather by another musician, and then it kind of still sounds off, but you can shift the drums instead of shifting the other musicians, just to get that downbeat to be clean. So there's different approaches for it, but definitely the most benefit of it is having a click that somebody else can play to as an overdub.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely getting people to play to the master thing is always best. Like I've learned, you know, that it's better to sketch something out, get a great drum track, and then have everybody play their stuff all over again to that drum track.
Right.
Not always. A lot of times it is, because there are other things that come and go when you, quote, redo stuff. Sometimes you redo stuff and sure, you tighten everything up, but you accidentally lose a quality to a sound that you didn't even realize you were putting in it in the first place. And so, you know, sometimes you can appreciate the sort of the live sloppiness around something is what gives it the character that you like.
Yeah. Sometimes if you mess around with it too much, it loses something, and it's hard to pinpoint what that is.
Yeah.
So I try to not mess around with it unless, you know, if the style requires it. In my kind of stuff that I do, it's all locked to the grid.
Yeah.
And that is part of the sound, you know, listening to a record like that without it kind of sounds like a demo, basically.
Right.
But other styles, you know, live music, you know, that, you know, definitely needs it. More free-flowing stuff, it needs to be whatever it was, whenever it was recorded.
Yeah, and if you're doing the commercial stuff, you're doing it so fast, too, that you're just like, that's the beauty. You don't go down the rabbit holes, probably.
You know, that is just whatever it is, you know, whatever's sounding good, go for it, and then that's it. Another thing that I will add to that, in terms of composing, whenever I did my first commercial and it was aired, the music was way lower in the mix than I wanted it to.
You're like, oh, that worked.
And that hurt me, and that just sent a kind of set a precedent of what it is working in this industry. Your music will always be buried under any VO, any dialogue, or any sound effect that will govern anything that you have. And it kind of sucks because when you're composing, you have like a mix, like you would do a record. Everything is at the same level, you know, jamming, and then it comes on the TV. You're like, oh, I can barely hear it. I put all that work in there. It's just like buried as it could be.
That's funny. Yeah. I guess if you really want your music to be front and center, go make a music video, rock stars.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So here's a question for you. What would you like to program next for Soundflow or a macro? What's like something that you've thought about where you're like, ooh, I really want to figure out how to do this like crazy configuration?
Actually, talking about tempo mapping, that is one that I should have done a long time ago. I didn't do it for the project that I described because I was on a tight deadline, but that one is a cool one because the one, what I'm talking about is whenever you're doing a tempo map, you basically you align the first downbeat with the downbeat of Pro Tools, so 1. And then you look at where the second downbeat is on the audio track, and then you line up Pro Tools to that. You hit Command I, and you identify the beat. That's why it calls it on Pro Tools.
When you say downbeat, do you mean like you've got a section that might have been 12 bars and then another section that's 12 bars and each one has its own downbeat or something?
I do it by bar. So basically,
every bar, okay,
I start there. Sometimes I might go into the beats, but I find the next bar 2, and then I do identify beat, basically telling Pro Tools where that second bar is.
Right.
But the dialogue that you're presented, you have to type in that number. What I would automate is look at the current timeline, and usually it'll let you, because you first kind of put a ballpark tempo and it will kind of line up. So let's say it landed up at 1 bar, 4 beats, and whatever number comes next. I want that number to be 2. So the script would know, we'll round it up. 1 bar and 4 beats, that's closer to 2. So just put 2 there and that's it.
Yeah, come on, Pro Tools.
So essentially, you would just have one button, and then as it will round up to whatever it is on the timeline. And that would just typing in those numbers. That's the part that's tough. Yeah, and I actually got pretty good at it. Without looking on, you just press the buttons on the numpad. Okay.
Well, I used to be like my big proud. I'm real good at this moment was renaming all the tracks.
Oh yeah,
like next track.
Yeah, command.
And then finally,
right hour. Yeah.
Then they put in batch rename, and I'm like, oh my god, it's such a huge time saver.
Well, I got one for you. If you want to hear this one, I have I've hijacked the duplicate keyboard shortcut for Pro Tools, which is Shift Option D.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're presented with a window that tells you
selecting that stuff.
Yeah, like how many tracks you want, how many do you want the clips that are on the main playlist? Do you want the playlist? No. Usually I have the same thing. I just want a duplicate of whatever it is.
Yeah, no audio on it.
No audio, I just want the plugins.
Don't put it in the same group.
Yeah, I just want to record whatever I'm doing. I just want to record in a new track with the same, everything else. So once you do that, you get the new track, but it has the name of the other track .dupe1 or dupe2.
Yeah, it's crazy names that don't make any sense later.
That has never looked right for me. And, Pro Tools only allows you to show a certain amount of characters. So there you get into the hieroglyphics. So you see, instead of guitar 1, you get guitar 1, and then it's just like you lose track of what you were looking at.
Let me reiterate that. Rockstar's guitar 1,
There you go.
You know exactly what we're talking about.
So I've hijacked that same keyboard shortcut that I'm used to. It will select everything that I know that I like. It will wait for that new track to show up and delete all the dupe, whatever. And it will read the session. If there's already a guitar 1, it will be guitar 2. If it's guitar 2 already in the session, it will be guitar 3. It will just find and tell, just do the work and find what the next available name is with the number.
That's great.
And that is a huge time saver right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak or distant or lack punch or clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you're using. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can use the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. For 15 years, I owned a famous MCI console that came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made many Grammy-winning records in the 1970s, and it sounded amazing. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to full digital mixing, I decided to team up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. This isn't just another boring plugin. The MBSI captures that same iconic sound that was used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, produced by Bill Simzik, Saturday Night Fever and Stayin' Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, and was loved by legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik, to name just a few. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a high and low-pass filter switch. Features I always wished that the console had. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio, just like me. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound. Go to makebelievestudio.com/MBSI. All right, well, we really appreciate you diving deep into the macro creations and stuff. And Rockstars, definitely go check out Soundflow if you haven't. It's worth it. And if it's not the right thing for you, then go look at a Keyboard Maestro or whatever, or just dive into the stuff that's already there, like track presets, and coming up with and batch renames and just
there's so many tools available. You don't have to get anything else. If anything, just the stuff that's available in Pro Tools. With every upgrade, there's something new that will make your workflow faster. I think the whole point of all this is to get the idea across into physical state as soon as possible, so that the whole thing can come into fruition. Because that is one of the things that it can make or break a record.
Well, I got some great takeaways from this. So I'm already going to go. I already know what buttons I'm going to be programming on my my Stream Deck next up down in the studio. And then again, just a reminder, Rockstars, I know what I wanted to ask you. Amazon tablets, Kindle Fire tablets, do those let you do the Soundflow buttons too?
Absolutely. Yeah,
right,
it works
great.
on both Android and iOS. You just got to go to the store. I don't know what the name of the store, but basically when you download apps on the Android, and there's a Soundflow app.
That's great.
And it works just exactly the same way as it is on the iOS.
Yeah, so that's great. So that means if you've got any of these leftover devices, Rockstars, and they could be old ones that you thought were not useful in the studio anymore, but you can put the buttons on it and it can be really, really handy.
Yeah, my iPads are stuck on iOS 12. As of today, we're in iOS 17.
And it still works.
And it still works.
Yeah.
Because it really is a very simple thing. It's a very simple app. It just interfaces with your computer through Wi-Fi. So what needs to be updated is actually the app on your computer, not the one on the iOS.
Right, it's just great. We really appreciate that because we're typically slow to upgrade for smart, for wise reasons in the studio because there's so much complexity. We don't want to break things by accident. All right, so let me take you to this closing question, Raphael. This is one I love to ask all the guests. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine. You get to go back in time and find young Raphael and say, listen, dude, you're not a Ninja Turtle. You are a rock god on guitar or whatever. You go back and find young version of yourself and you say, listen, I've come back in time to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice do you feel like going back and giving yourself if you could?
Oh, dude, that would be number one. Work on your people skills. By far, that has been the thing that has helped me the most, because starting out, I was not the best at anything. But what kept me around is just the client liked me. They thought that I was a good hang, and that they thought that I was just better because of that. And then, I like a lot of people reach a wall. It's like, I remember being at one of the studios that I worked at. They had an open house, and I was just not talking to anybody. I was on my phone. It's like, man, I just, I'm usually more of an introvert. But I needed to make this happen because the studio hired me and they brought me to the open house so that I can get clients in. So I just make sure that the next open house to make a point to just be more, just ask people what they're working on. Or, I just, looking back at it during that experience, I just thought about it like I didn't want to sell anybody on anything. Like I always hated the whole thing about selling, like trying to be a salesman. So the way that I approach it was just, let's just talk about what you're doing. We're in the studio. I obviously want you to come record, but just tell me what your artistry, like what is cool for you? Like, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about?
Yeah.
And then after our successful event, I was like, man, I think I can do this to actually, because that was the next step for me, just work on my people skills. And I think that has done so good for me. Coming from where I come from, because I was not people guy.
English is probably second language for you.
Yeah, English is my second language. Wow. So yeah, like I had to like work on that a lot, and I feel like if I would have done that earlier, I would have been further along in my career, I guess.
Well, you got good at it. I mean, I remember when we met at Addiction Studios. I think it was during the lunch break or something, and we're just sitting down at a table chatting.
Yeah, I approached you because you had posted on the Soundflow forum, and I helped you through it. It's like, man, you don't know me, but I just helped you on the Soundflow forum. That's how we met, and that I think pretty much is a proof of what I just told you about. It's like before I wouldn't have done that, just because I would feel hesitant. Oh, he's not gonna, but it doesn't matter. So now the way that I think about it is I don't care. I just talk to people. I saw you. It's like, you look friendly. It's like, hey, I'm eager to get to know you. So
that's a good thing about music. That's one of the things I love about going to events. Because when you go to an event like a conference or a meetup or something, you can kind of presume that everybody there is interested in the same thing.
Yes.
So therefore you get to talk about the stuff you like talking about. I mean, I'm not going to a dentistry event,
right?
Because that wouldn't be my natural thing to talk about. But even in music, even going to a show, the good news is, unless it's somebody in the audience and then just wide open. But I guess you could talk about the band you just saw,
right?
But a lot of the times you go out to live music and it's like everybody's in a band of some sort, and one thing that they all have to talk about is themselves.
Yeah.
So all you have to do really is ask people about themselves and get them talking. And I guess that's what I just did with you, man. So thanks for talking to us for a couple hours. Let the rock stars know, where can they go find out more about you? What if they are ready to dial in their super duper Mutant Ninja Turtle studio setup? Sorry, that's two Mutant Ninja Turtle references. I never even really watched the show, but actually mostly through our mutual friend, Matt Mahaffey, I know that Raphael's one of the characters. But seriously though, if the rock stars want to really dial in their studio, how would they find you with questions, or if they want to reach out and say, "Dude, guide me through this"?
Instagram. Just find me, Raphael Sepulveda, on Instagram, and I've pretty much condensed everything to just Instagram nowadays. I don't have a website anymore. I should probably bring that back, but right now Instagram is definitely the best way to find me.
Yeah, and Instagram's easy. Even if you're not using it all the time, it's the messaging, the DM thing is so simple.
Yes, that I just have it. That's how I connect with people, and I show what I'm working on. So definitely find me on Instagram, and we'll take care of you.
Awesome, dude. And so, what are you excited about next?
I am just excited about all the new Pro Tools stuff that's coming. Coming off, we were at NAMM just a couple months ago. And Avid is a completely new company now. They're showing off what they have coming up. Before it was all top secret stuff. Now they're showing, I feel excited being a Pro Tools user. So, there's a lot of cool stuff in the works, and it's just a great time to be in this industry.
Well, you got to go home and hook up your patch bass.
Oh, yeah. Right? Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Rockstars, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging with us again today. And, Raphael, Good to see you, dude.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll see you around the studio, dude. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this show possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, Empirical Labs, Sound Porter Mastering, and Trace Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. At empiricallabs.com, use the code RSR10 for 10% off the Arouser and Big Freak plugins. And finally, use the code RSR15 to get 15% off your custom patch bay labels at traceaudio.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio, and they're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.